Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Good Book Life. And this week's bookish chat is trad versus indie publishing, strengths, myths, money, timelines, and creative control. And I'm joined by a plethora of awesome people to talk about the subject. They are experts because they are authors, readers, and people who are knowledgeable about both trad and indie publishing. And I will get them to introduce themselves to you now. So first of all, Stephen Cox.
Hi, I'm Stephen Cox. As it says on the thing, I had two traditional books out from a small imprint and a big publisher. I got the full traditional debut experience and find myself now self-publishing. And I'm just about to launch the second of my Crooked Medium series. And the travails I've been through are, I hear time and time again from people who've had a trad debut.
Hi, I'm Jacey Bedford. I've had 7 traditionally published books by Door in the USA, but now, since 6 of those have now been orphaned since Door was taken over by Astra, I've now started to bring them out again, not independently, but with a small press publisher in the UK, which is Wizard's Tower, and I'm very happy that the first one's out now.
Hi, I'm Kate MacDonald. I used to be a publisher. I ran Handheld Press for 7 years, but now I self-publish my own fiction under the veil of mystery called the Peachfield Press. And I'm just about to bring out my second novel, and today I spent the whole day wrestling with metadata.
Hi, I'm Trudie Skies. I was originally published with a small press and then decided to go the self-publishing route. I published a few gas-lamp fantasy novels. I've got one coming out this summer, and I'm quite happy doing indie and self-publishing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question about where you feel you fit in the publishing world, first of all. What do you consider yourself first? Is it a storyteller? Is it a brand? You're an entrepreneur, a craftsperson? What would you say your primary role is in publishing? Stephen?
I think it's about telling the stories. I mean, if somebody told me that I would never, ever be able to publish by any route again, I think I would probably still write. I might write some slightly different stuff. And that's because, tell the story quickly, I mean, I've spent about 49 years of my life wanting to be a writer, and then actually only got off my arse in my 49th year and did something about being one.
I think that's familiar to me. Kate?
I used to consider myself an editor because I was an editor for about 20 years. And then I turned into a publisher and I was an academic on the side. So all that was frothing around. And then I began to realize I want to be a storyteller. Can I be a storyteller too? And that has evolved. So I think it's a continuum. I've done pretty much every job there is in publishing and the book trade. So it just makes sense that I really want to write my own books and stories as well.
Thanks. Trudie?
I think there's a lot of pressure when you're indie publishing and possibly with trad publishing to be an entrepreneur or to make yourself a brand. But I think you always default to be the storyteller because that's where you begin. And that's definitely true for me.
Thanks. And Jacey?
Well, I started off as a reader like we all do, and it just seemed very natural from reading stories to telling them and writing them. And long before I ever got the idea that I might be good enough to be published, I was writing stories. I mean, you don't want to hear the one that I wrote when I was about 16, but it contained kind of my favorite pop stars under different names, and but even then it was a fantasy, or an urban fantasy, I suppose you would call it now. But the world will be glad I never got beyond 6 chapters, and it was a long time before I kind of gritted my teeth and sent something off to a publisher or an editor. And been published then since I think 1998 was the first time.
Okay, and the next question is, did you choose your publishing route, or do you think it chose you? So, Trudie?
I would say I chose it to begin with. I did the whole querying thing back in the day, and that's how I found my small press. And from then, I chose to self-publish, so I feel like that it was definitely my choice.
Yeah. Kate?
Oh, I chose it because I'm too impatient. I know how slow traditional publishing can be. And since lockdown and the pandemic, the industry has really changed. It's far, far slower than it used to be. And I'm 62. I do not want to wait around for 5 years for my novel to be picked up. I just want to get on with it. So I actively chose to do self-publishing, and I'm very happy with that choice.
Yes. Stephen?
So I queried a novel and sort of rather thought self-publishing was fine because I actually knew a couple of people who did it. But I queried a novel, and the second novel I queried did actually get the deal, and you only need one publisher to say yes. And I was quite happy with it. But there were, starting from the sales figures of the first book, many issues started to turn up. So I found myself a few years later with two trad books out, a book I thought was great that had been bouncing around the industry for 3 years with the agent had changed, all that stuff. And I actually went, well, bloody hell, this book is at least as good as some of the other self-published books I've read. I'm going to publish it. And so I'm now in a position where I sort of see myself as amphibious and I'll deal with whatever world I have to. I've just sold a small press book to a small press, which I'm very, very proud of. I see lots of strengths and advantages in both routes, really. And if somebody came out and said, "My God, these Crooked Medium books are fantastic. Can we offer you a lot of money to do some more?" Then I might very well do it. But on the more likely thing that they won't, because I won't write strictly to what they want, I see myself chucking one of those out every year or so for a bit, yeah, now, and some other things. I mean, I've got ideas stacked up to the roof, but there we go.
Yeah, do you think that's because you needed some experience of trad publishing to sort of like know that that was the route that you were going to choose?
Well, because I'm not a spring chicken, I mean, obviously I've been reading about the industry for quite a long time, certainly since the early 90s. But I'm in a group which is completely method, a writing group, which I've been in for 13 years or so. It has people who successfully self-published, people who've kickstarted, people who've small pressed, people who've tried and failed trad publishing. I was one of the few people who's had a straightforward 2-book trad deal. And the problem with the trad industry is that the agents and the publishers are chasing what will be the 1 book in 10 that makes significant money, and they are guessing what the industry will be like when the book comes out. And they're not dumb people, but they don't necessarily grasp it. And the other thing is, it's very easy to write a book that everybody who reads says, "Oh, this is lovely," but the publishers are not really sure how we can get real commercial success out of it, because it doesn't fall into the channels that seem to work at the moment, which will change in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, you give me an idea about something else I can ask you, but first of all, we'll ask Jacey. Do you think your route chose you, or did you choose it?
I never had any doubt that I was going to go for trad publishing. I sold my first short story in 1998, but it was another 16 years before I actually got a book deal. And I got my first book came out with Door in 2014. And I think the self-publishing world was a little different 12 years ago. So it never actually struck me that I would go down the self-publishing route. I did know one person who'd done it, and he'd sold tens of copies till he ran out of relatives. So I knew that self-publishing was a really difficult route for the promotional aspects of it. And so I always wanted to go with trad publishing, and I got my first deal with Door. I got the deal in 2013, and then the first book came out in 2014. And that lasted until Door was taken over by Astra. They've still got one of my books in print, but they orphaned my 2 trilogies, and now I'm having to think again in the way I do things. I did consider self-publishing briefly, but then got a small press deal and thought I would go with that instead, because I'm not that good at self-promotion.
The thing about some of the people we know who've been big success stories, I'm thinking about like C.K. MacDonald was self-publishing the Dublin trilogy and think all his standalone books as well. And he got trad published eventually for the Stranger Times books, but it seems to be that you have to have a lot of nous. And I knew Queef stand-up comedy many years ago, and I think maybe that's probably gave him an edge into like knowing how to self-promote a little bit. But yeah, there are others as well. Like I've worked on books for trad publishers that have previously had quite a few sales as self-published items, and then they've been put to trad publishers as like I will pick you up and actually give you more publicity or whatever, seeing as you've already got a hit on your hands. I always wonder at that because surely if the person has self-published, they seem to be, and they've had a hit, aren't they doing all right? Think about TJ Klune and his Wolf books as well, his Brotherhood books. Oh, I don't know what you think about that. Kate, I can see you thinking about that.
Yeah, I can imagine the attraction of being taken up or by being scooped up by a trad publisher, because they would do all the marketing and all the distribution, and they would handle the really tedious book industry backroom stuff, which authors tend not to know anything about. And it is hard to teach yourself that stuff. But at the same time, you are slowed down to their schedule. You can't get the book out when you want. You may not have much choice when it comes to the cover. They may market the book in a way you think is wrong or skewed or just not suitable, and you may not have much choice about that. So you do give away a lot if you go with a trad publisher. Well, you have the potential is there to give away a lot. You might get lucky. And you might also get a really fantastic cover by a professional, seriously good artist, which doesn't actually reflect what you think the book is about. So it'll sell, but it might not sell to the people you think it ought. Anyway, there are lots of trade-offs.
Yeah, I can remember the 90s. There was like, or early 2000s, where there was like a lot of like books published that happened to like have an older character as the protagonist, but the cover would feature one of the younger ones who appears for 2 minutes.
Funny that.
Because
Yeah.
that might sell more.
There have been a
Yeah.
lot of success stories lately with indies getting picked up by trad publishers. Some really big names like M.L. Wang and Blood Over Brighthaven that originally started off as self-published, and it's a massive success. Dungeon Crawler Carl is probably one of the bigger, most well-known ones that's out there right now. And I mean,
Yes.
there's definitely positives and benefits to going down that route. You could obviously negotiate things like translation rights. I know special edition deals have been going through for some of these books, and Trad can help with that in some instances. So there's definitely some benefits.
Yeah, Dungeon Crawler Carl confuses me a little bit because I see there's a lot of books out there with those characters, but it's the one book that has been picked up, isn't it? And that's on the Clark Award shortlist. So
Mm.
it's like, yeah, a lot of people are going, "What? This has been out for ages," and it's like, no, actually, it hasn't. It's just it was a different thing before. So I'm wondering how much they think these things change. Like, because there are pros and cons really to sort of like being picked up by a trad publisher. So what I do as an editor is I will come along and I'll be in a link in the chain for an author, and I'll be there sort of like looking at things once the team have looked at the book and advised. Once the agent has already like advised the author, the author's done lots of rewrites themselves, perhaps because they're bedded in the industry and they know how many rewrites they need to do to get a decent story out there. So then their editor has a look at it, and then it will come through to copy edits, and that's where I come in. And that's not even the end, because there's proofreading as well. So there's a lot of people in the chain. And I always wonder things like, I then see traditionally published books that have been picked up that are originally self-published, and I can kind of sometimes, I think, tell because there are things that I think that if they had gone out as they were in the first instance as trad push, maybe there would be elements of the story or elements of the vocabulary that wouldn't have gone through the way they do. sometimes. I don't know how you feel about that. Who has been in this boat?
I think the editing part of it with a trad publisher is really important. Well, especially if you get on with your editor. I mean, my editor was Sheila Gilbert at Door, and Sheila's a really, really good editor, but she doesn't give me anything in writing. She used to call me up, and I would sit there with a pad of paper and a pen, and I would end up with about 16 pages of scribbled notes from the telephone conversation, and then I had to go away and apply them to the book. But she was a really, really good editor. And, you know, we're talking about developmental editing, which a lot of people who go straight into trad publishing don't realise there are various phases of editing, and the developmental it's no good having a really good copy edit if your developmental editor has not actually done a very good job for you, or if you haven't had one at all, in fact.
Yeah.
My biggest expense is editing, because I have a very, very thorough editor, and I have to pay for a proofreader. And I don't think many people thinking about self-publishing think that's important. I had people pick me up on a couple of typos in my first self-published book. And what's slightly quaking about the second self-published book is it's the first book that I'll be publishing that hasn't had somebody working for the industry officially, like an agent or an editor, an actual book commissioning editor, cast neither. So this one is me, pure and unadorned. So so far the symptoms are good, but the symbols are good. But I think that the skill set you need to be a good self-publisher really includes the ability to think in a business way, which a lot of authors aren't. I'm not particularly one. The other one is to grasp marketing, and I come from a communications background, and I know I don't understand proper marketing in the way I understand other forms of communication. And so for example, I've just sat there and people have explained Amazon ads to me about 5 or 6 times, and I just don't, it doesn't spark joy. And I actually sit there and think, I'm effectively doing this, I'm looking after my wife and some other things, and I'm no longer working for much money. And I know the route to success is not, financial success is not guaranteed. I mean, the road to break even is not guaranteed. And, you have to make some choices about what you want to do with your life, which is why I think you have to set your own success criteria. I've got been having a whole tier of success. So, for point 1, the book comes back to the printer and it looks reasonable. That's under your control. Sell 1 million copies. No, that's not under my control, really.
I think hand selling a book is so useful. I always make sure I've got a long string of book fairs and science fiction fantasy conventions that I can be at selling my books. And people come back next year asking for the sequel and have you done the series? And it takes a bit of time, but it really helps shift. I've also got a couple of bookshops. My first novel was about Shetland, and there's a couple of bookshops in Shetland that are ordering it. So I've had to do a new reprint of that novel because of the demand from up north, because they get a lot of tourists. So making sure you identify shops and opportunities to exchange cash for book. It's not just about putting yourself on social media, writing a newsletter. You have to have the physical books there to sell, and that really helps.
I adore person-to-person selling. I love it. Conventions are one thing, but you tend to be tucked away in a room and be often an afterthought for people attending those conventions. So, although I'm entertained by them, I like going around dealers' rooms. But actual book fairs, I want to say, like, people who are very used to conventions, try a book fair. They are great.
Well, I went to a local book fair a few months ago, and there must have been 20 people through the door that afternoon, and I sold one book, and it wasn't even one of mine. It was one of the Milford anthologies that I didn't get any money for. So
Oh my goodness.
So there are book fairs and book fairs. I think you've probably got to choose them.
Yeah, you've got to footfall to know enough people are coming through, and how has it been advertised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to say, I agree.
There is one happening in Milton Keynes on the 26th of September in the MK Centre. I'm organising that one. There we go.
I'm sure it'll be brilliant.
Yeah. Sorry,
Kate,
Stephen.
I also no, sorry, I just want to say, I think if when people say to me what actually shifts books in numbers, I would say the right type of hand selling shifts numbers. You know, because I go around with 2 copies of the book in my bag, and you know, I still haven't cracked all of this, but I know that talking to people about the book does sell it.
Yeah, I couldn't walk around with the copies in my bag because I am very clumsy. I would ruin them and be like, "Have a look at this dog-eared copy. Do you want it?" Apart from that, no. I'm quite good with the fairs. Yeah. So, what do authors need to consider when it comes to the earning potential of trad versus indie? I'm going to get to Trudie for this one.
I suppose obviously when you're going with trad, everything gets paid for. You don't have to worry about spending money up front for editing, for cover art, for marketing, as well as that. For going for indie, you have to obviously factor that into your potential sales, into your potential earnings. In terms of like what you could potentially earn, I can't really speak for the trad side. Obviously, you've got your advances that you're not going to get with indie, but with indie, you're going to keep a lot more of your own royalties for yourself, and you're kind of in charge of your own sales. You can keep a track of the matrix of how you're selling them as well. But obviously, you do have to upfront pay for things like editing, like cover art, and anything else you might want to do. But at the same time, that's a tax expense you can write off. So it kind of works out.
Indeed, the old tax deductible is something to consider. Yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, the thing about trad is a lot of people can't get into it. So if your earnings in trad, if you can't get into it, are zero. And if you have a situation where your first book is moderately successful, the editor leaves, your agent leaves, the company puts it back a year, then there's a pandemic and everything stops. Your earnings then will be very, very slow in a way that they wouldn't necessarily be if you were self-publishing. The fact is, I expect to have made more money from my 2-book deal than I will make self-publishing for the rest of my life. But it wasn't riches; it was just quite nice to have.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. I'm getting the advance is great, but it's an advance against royalties, and if you don't earn out, then the royalties don't come in. And I didn't earn out with all my books with Door. I mean, they obviously got to the point where they'd made a profit on it, but at that point, I only had the advance, which was not. I mean, it wasn't millions of books, don't get me wrong, but it was far more than I think I could have earned from self-publishing those books. And now I've gone with a small press. There's no advance from a small press, but you get royalties from the first book that's sold. So I've had the advance on those books, and now I'm getting royalties on those books, and it's quite nice to be in that position. I think the books don't owe me anything, let's put it that way.
I think if you're considering a trad publisher as opposed to an indie one, should you ever be in that position, think about what a trad publisher might do with your books 3 or 4 years down the line, because they will have printed, say, maybe 500 copies, and they have to sit in a warehouse. The warehouse space and shelving has to be paid for. And if those books aren't shifting, the decision to go to remainder will happen an awful lot faster because they need that space. They want the stock to keep going. The units have to be sold. Whereas an indie publisher will print far fewer, will probably keep them in the attic or the garage or somewhere dry that they don't have to pay for, or in the back bedroom. That happens as well. So you don't have the terror of what might happen to your babies if the publisher decides, well, there's not selling, on we go, let's just ditch them. And if you have a 2-book deal, well, that's lovely, but you may also find that the 2-book deal runs out or they cancel it. I mean, I don't know. I can think of so many bad and evil things that trad publishers will do, but they will give you reach and they will give you volume, which an indie or a self-publisher simply can't afford to do. They have that capital investment capacity.
You're also much more likely to get decent book reviews initially from a trad publishing deal, because they'll send stuff out to the bookseller and to various different kind of fairly high profile places for review. And they don't do very much after that. It really, their marketing is, you know, I mean, leaves a lot to be desired. You still have to do a lot of pushing yourself. But I've got a decent amount of reviews for the books published by Door. And when SciTech came out, which I admit is a republication, it first came out from Door and now it's out in the UK. And I looked on Amazon the other day, it's been out since April and there are no reviews. You know, I've got a load of reviews from the first publishing, but nothing from the second one. So I think getting those
out there.
Sorry?
But it's the same book essentially, but because it's a different different edition.
It's the same book. It's never been published in the UK before, so we were hoping for more UK sales. But actually, even now, it's selling better in America than it did in the UK, than it's doing in the UK. Don't ask me why.
If you've read the books, please review them.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
As an anthology publisher, we don't get an awful lot of reviews anyway because people only tend to dip into anthologies and maybe not read the whole thing. We know this. And also they don't get picked up a lot by reviewers. They prefer to review single standalone novels. And also, yeah, there's not a lot I can do about that. But also I won't be pushing them to be in bookshops either, because there's not a lot of call for short fiction anthologies in bookshops. So it is all going to be about word of mouth and that kind of thing for me. But yeah, reviews are good if you can get them. Right, okay, so we're coming up to the end of our. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll get to sort of like talk about what we've got going on right now. So I'm going to ask, what are the myths that need busting about either traditional or independent publishing, and what myth about your publishing path annoys you the most, Kate?
Oh, well, it's not my personal publishing path, but so you know the phenomenon of debut author, photograph of pretty white woman with blonde hair, and she's about 30. I took on a freelancer when I was a publisher to help with my marketing. And she was a published author. She was about 45, and she told me in absolute horror that her publisher wanted her to pretend she was a much younger woman as a debut author for book one of a new series that she was going to bring out. So they were going to pretend that she was a completely different person. Now, it's all anyone can write under a pen name, that's completely fine. But pretending that she's younger and this is her first book, that really outraged us both. And it's really not an unusual phenomenon in the trade within genre fiction, like romance fiction. And that was her genre, with a bit of fantasy. So I think that annoyed me, the myth of the debut author.
Oh yes, I know somebody else with a younger persona, a very, very prolific writer and a successful writer, but they've got a blonde younger self, slightly fuzzy profile picture. It's not real.
Terrible.
Okay, Stephen, how about you?
So I think the myth about traditional publishing is your first deal secures you as a lifetime author. And whenever I speak to somebody, I say to them, it doesn't work like that. You've always got the next contract. You just have to understand that you have to be nifty. And I went in thinking my 2-book deal would take me, I'd be publishing a book every 18 months till the 22nd century. You know, the myth about self-publishing is that people make sweeping statements about it. You know, it's all crap. No, it isn't. Some of it's really good. It's inherently the books are inherently better. It's got some very good books, but there are also some very bad ones. The myth about my career is, I think that if I wasn't in several large groups of authors of various different genres, I might think I'd been uniquely hard done by losing an agent, losing an editor, having a row about what the second book was going to be, being hit by a pandemic. You know, I mean, lots of people have these very bumpy roads, and I think I'm happier for not having dogmatically said it's trad or nothing, because the beautiful book I love very much, my third book, wouldn't exist if I'd insisted on finding a traditional publisher, which was very slow and noticeably ruder, fewer responses, less feedback than the first time I queried 5 or 6 years earlier.
Yeah, I try not to be rude as a publisher. I think because I've been in that boat, and I don't know why people could just like be so brusque. What's wrong with them? Jacey, what myths would you like to bust?
That when you've sold your first book and had it published, then you must be quids in and you're a success immediately because you've got a book published. And obviously your worries beforehand is, will I ever get a publishing deal? Will my book be good enough? Will I ever find an agent, etc., etc.? And then suddenly you make that first sale and you think, oh, good, I've made it. And then you realize that no, there's a whole new set of problems opening up in front of you. As in, will my book sell? Will the edit work out? I mean, I was really lucky with my editor, and she was great, and we never had any arguments at all. I had 2-3 book deals and then a solo deal. And I think, from what Stephen said, I think if Door had remained as Door, I would have stayed with them. But when they sold to Astra, it became a different firm altogether. Door was very much still a family firm, which was quite unusual, I think, in these days of mega publishing corporations, that Door was a bit independent. In fact, the first thing Sheila said when she bought the first book was, what else have you got? Because we'll have to see which is the best first book for your career with Door. I mean, and had Door still been Door, I'm sure I would have been publishing with them forever. But of course, things change. Again, as Stephen said, things change, publishers change, you find yourself in a different position. There's always the next problem, and you haven't just made it with one book, and you're certainly not quids in with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I did see this where you've got like a lot of publishers like they do a push on that book. They might even do a Kindle daily deal so that you've got like that kudos of a bestseller going on, but you've paid 99p for it. What money are they going to make?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not making anything.
No.
Yeah. Trudie, what myth would you like to bust?
So there's a lot of myths when it comes to self-publishing. A few of them that I don't really like is that it's more hard work to be a self-published author, but that's not true. It's just as hard work to be a trad. You have to market your own stuff, and you don't have to market when you're trad. Except these days, you do have to market. You absolutely have to market, regardless of what path you do. And to be fair, your publisher might not even put that much effort into your book if they decide that they decided just don't want to for whatever reason, they just don't want to put the money into it. So both paths, you're going to have to put work into it. And also, I guess the one that kind of I feel like it's a big myth is that you have to spend a fortune to be a self-published author. And to be fair, you can self-publish on a budget. You don't have to put thousands, and I would actually advise never to put thousands into your first book. Do not go into debt to publish a book. Do not do that. You can do it on a budget. There are cover artists that aren't AI that could do it fairly cheap, and there's different ways of getting around it. But I suppose actually the biggest myth that really gets my goat is the idea that as Stephen said, that self-published books are somehow inferior, somehow worse, but they're not. Even trad books have typos.
Yeah.
So,
and that might be our fault, editors. It's like you've got vast teams of people looking through scripts to look for spelling errors. And editing is more than spelling errors anyway, but you can edit them out, and then the author might edit some more back in, and then somewhere somebody will miss something.
something always gets
Sometimes.
through.
Yeah,
I've just had to de-Americanize the SciTech book. Obviously I wrote it in British English, but it got translated into American English for the Door publication, and now I didn't want it to still have all the American spellings in when it came out with Wizard's Tower, so I had to go through the whole damn thing word by word by word by word. And you change the U's and you put the IZE endings into ISE, and you put double L's in Traveller and things like that, and I almost missed the first word in the damn book which was acknowledgements. And I've never known how to spell acknowledgements. I've always got it wrong one way or another. And then I realised that's because it's a different spelling in America to England, because we have an extra E in it. No wonder I didn't know how to spell it. I've read it both ways all my life.
Yeah, if you don't get acknowledgement right, then somebody will make a judgment on you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yes, I'm going to ask you, what would you like to tell readers about? What have you got going on right now? Your latest publications. What are you working on? Kate.
Oh, right. Well, on 1st September, I'm bringing out Radical Magic, which is my new novel, which is about the Regency but with magic and a historical mystery and time travel. So that's what all the metadata was about. And when I'm not doing that, I'm trying to review books for Strange Horizons, and I've got one coming out with ancillary review of books. And I am desperately trying to get back to the work in progress, which is another novel.
Oh, great. That sounds great. Regency Magic. I love that.
I do
too. I'll have to see that when it's out. Yes.
It'll be on NetGalley on Thursday.
Oh,
fantastic.
Right. Okay.
Trudie.
I'm releasing my next Gaslamp fantasy book, which is called The Chosen One Con. It's coming out on the 1st of September. It currently is on NetGalley right now, if you want to give it a read. It's about a contest of celebrity mages who are trying to determine who can be the prophesized chosen one. And it focuses on 2 working class young lads that enter this contest and pretend to be basically posh mages in order to fit in. The whole thing's just one big con, though.
Smashing. Yes. Stephen.
So a year ago, I published The Crooked Medium's Guide to Murder, which has older queer women representation. And it's a quarrelling cross-class couple, one of whom is a fraudulent spiritualist, the other one of which is a blunt northern radical. And people have been kind about it and said, what's going to happen next? So on the 14th of September, but available now, is A Crooked Medium's Guide to Terror, which is even darker. It's a bit darker. I mean, it's got a warm vibe, but don't call it cozy, because I'll get quite cross if you call it cozy. And I'm told it's a thrilling. I mean, I don't have an objection to cozy. It's just not my idea of cozy. I'm very much looking forward to flogging some copies of this and people enjoying it, which is the important thing.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I mean, if anybody wants a copy, drop me a line.
Yes. And Jacey.
Well, as I said before, SciTech came out at Easter with Wizard's Tower. It's the first in a trilogy, and the other 2, which are Crossways and Nimbus. Crossways is coming out at BristolCon this year, and then Nimbus will be out at EasterCon next year. So that'll be that trilogy taken care of. I am actually writing another one set in the same universe. It's about a bunch of people who are psionically enhanced by brain implants, which may be more fantasy than science anyway, but there you go. And I'm writing one which is set in the same universe, but 25 years on. And I'm finding it really difficult to find time to actually get the damn thing written. So I'm about 60,000 words into that now. But I am going to Milford in September, and hopefully I'll get a bit more written then, because it's really lovely. Gladstone's Library is a really lovely place to write.
I love a retreat. I love retreats, and like going to Wales to my friends there and doing their retreat. Hopefully I get to do that next year if they get it running. Like hint.
Well, I have to say, Gladstone's is beautiful. We run a retreat there in May. Milford runs a retreat in May, and we run the writing workshop in September. But you can also get time to write while you're there. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's like going home, a library with bedrooms. What more could you ask for?
I mean, this is a library and it's got a foot in it, but yeah. Normally it's occupied by the cat at the moment.
Oh dear.
What I've got going on is, of course, I'm organising the Indie Book Fair at MK Centre for MK Lit Fest on the 26th of September. I will also be attending BristolCon, so the Slab Press will have some books for sale there, and then we'll also be at FantasyCon, where we should be launching Screams and Wails, a metal horror anthology. In the meantime, if you could like and subscribe, leave a comment, we will reply. It just leaves me to say thank you to my wonderful guests, Stephen Cox, Jacey Bedford, Kate MacDonald, and Trudie Skies. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week for another Good Book Life. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
us.
Thank you. Bye bye.